Welcome to Adding Fuel to the Hire, a podcast for hiring managers and job seekers across all types of dealerships. With over 20 years collective recruitment experience, Rowan, Tony and Phil draw upon their knowledge to help you navigate through the recruitment and job hunt process. For more information, head to our website, addingfueltothehire.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of Adding Fuel to the Hire. I'm your host today, Rowan, and today I've got with me Phil. How's it going, Phil?
Good. How you going, Rowan?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Today we're talking about finding the right company for you. So this is for candidates who are on the job search, or even maybe they're employed in their current role, and they would like to know, how do I find that company that's going to be the right fit for me? So that's what this episode's all about. So we're going to go through a few of the things about, the different types of businesses and how they can have an effect on your experience working there, and values and cultures, and how you actually go about doing the research to find that company and the information that you need. So I guess let's start off, Phil. Why is it important to find a company that's right for you?
Well, good question to start off with. Generally speaking, you spend more time at work than you do with your family. Most of us will spend about 40 hours a week at work, the majority of the waking hours from Monday to Friday. So making sure you're at a company that has the same values as you, at a company that fits with your personality a little bit as well. Obviously, it's work life; it's a little bit different to your home life, but still, you've got to have that cultural fit. A good example would be, for example, if you're super passionate about climate change, then working for a coal company is probably not the best way for you to go.
That's right. And look, I guess with all that time spent at work as a percentage of your overall lifespan, obviously working in the wrong company can have an effect on you, whereas working in the right company can have a positive effect. So I guess what are some of those effects that might come up in terms of how the right company can affect that, your feelings and how you perform at work?
Yeah. Oh, look, it can totally affect the way you perform at work, but also the way you're at home, I've had it before where if you're at a great company, you're feeling good, you're feeling positive, what you ideally want is you want to finish up on a Friday and you want to be thinking about, I'm happy to start again on Monday.
Yeah.
I'm not dreading Monday. If you feel like you're working towards that 5 o'clock on a Friday and you're dreading Sunday night because it hits you like a brick wall that you've got to go back there, then your personal life is affected as well as your work life. And if you're unhappy at work, you're not going to perform very well and you're going to be unhappy at home as well. I've had both sides of it, and I can tell you finding the right company is super important.
You definitely feel more energized and enthused to take on new projects and to go the extra mile to get those tasks done as well. So, having that company that, you feel aligned with and that, is going to challenge and stimulate you, it's definitely is a positive effect on your ability to do your job, basically.
Yeah, that's right. I always look at it as there's two sides to it. There's the role, and then there's the company. That's your two aspects for me. When you're looking for a new role, obviously you want to look for the job that's right for you. But the next thing you need to look for is is this the right company for me? And we're going to talk a little bit about how to figure that out.
Definitely. And I guess in the world of dealerships, generally we sort of see two types of dealerships. So we've got the big business, corporate, larger dealership groups, and then we've got the small family or privately owned dealerships. So I guess each have their own benefits and weaknesses, I suppose. So let's talk about some of those. And why don't we start with big business?
Yeah.
So your large dealer groups, like what do you think some of the positives and negatives for working at a big business is?
Positives, it's very well set up usually. With the bigger guys, you've got systems in place. Everything should generally run fairly smoothly. There's a procedure for everything. There's a process for everything. That's a big positive. There's career progression. You if it's a bigger dealership group with 6, 7, 8 branches, there's a lot of roles up for grabs, and if they do hire internally, then you've got a good chance of getting those higher up roles, and also gives you an opportunity to relocate if that's what you want to do. So that's there as well. Obviously, the salaries tend to be quite good.
Yep.
The larger your group is, generally the more money you're going to have, and you're going to be able to offer your employees a little bit above what the market generally pays. So those are sort of some of the positives. In terms of the negatives, there can be a lot of red tape. So if you're in terms of, say you've just gone in as a service manager and you want to make changes, sometimes it's not as easy as just making those changes. You've got to go through the appropriate channels. If you've come from a smaller dealership where you say, look, I've figured this out. I think we can do this better. Let's do it better. And you can do it better. If you then go into a larger group, it's not that easy. You have to go through upper management, or you have to go through HR and get it all approved and that sort of thing. And smaller changes can take, a longer time. The other thing as well, and this comes often down to the culture, but you can sometimes feel like just a number. You sort of feel a bit swallowed up by all the other employees and think, oh, gee, there's another 200 people here. Who am I? So those are some of the negatives. So there's positives and negatives to all types of businesses, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess on the smaller side of it, there's certainly positives for working in there, and generally it's kind of the opposite of the negatives for working in a big business. So I mean, there's certainly that ability to be able to make changes quickly in a small dealership. You're generally, if you're in a management position, you're making decisions which you can just implement without having to go through all that red tape because you're accountable. I think, that there's certainly an opportunity to grow that as well, bringing in some strong talent and your skills into a smaller dealership that maybe hasn't had that type of person before, can really improve their performance. And it's quite rewarding because you can bring in systems and apply parts of it to get the results. And that often is quite a positive.
Yeah, that's right.
Also, you've got that personal relationship with the business that you're connected to. So, you're not just a number. You're there. You're part of a lot of these family dealerships are run like a family. That they're a lot more close knit, and the culture can be good there. So, but in terms of, I guess, some of the negatives, often there's not a lot of space to grow. There's not a lot of positions to move up the ladder. So it may be a stepping stone, and that's a bit of a problem in a small dealership, is that there's just not as many opportunities as there are in a large multi-site dealer group, for example. So even sideways or into a different department can often be difficult as well. So that's one of the negatives there. At a smaller dealership.
Yeah, that's right. And, to figure this out, and we're going to talk about this now a little bit, but you need to really sit down and really think about, what do I want out of a role? Yeah. And what do I want out of my, career? If you, maybe you don't want to move up. Maybe you are happy to work on this service department and work it hard and make it extremely profitable, and know you're going to be home every single night at, 5:30, whatever it is. Maybe it is that you want career progression and that sort of thing. So we'll talk about that a little bit now.
Yeah, great. Let's talk about those values and culture as well. So I guess, as you said, what are the values that you're looking for? Is it a business that puts their, the value on their customers or their staff?
Yeah.
Talk us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you want to really think about, this is ideally something you'll do. Look, you can do it at all points of your career. Often you will have a clearer picture of this once you've been in a role for a little bit and you've had some experience working at different companies. And you've sort of seen, this dealership does certain things like that. Dealership A is really big on its customers. I love that. Or you say dealership A was really big on its customers and they kind of forgot about the team. The team was copying a lot of bad feedback from customers, and particularly the service advisors were really copped the brunt of it all. So I didn't really like that because it gave everyone a sort of a bad feeling. No one would really want to go to work. So there's a few things to keep in mind there. You want to think about, do they value customer service over everything else? Do they value their staff's happiness over everything else? What's their overall mission? Do they just want to make money? That's fine. If you just want to make money, at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. But where's this company come from? How did they actually develop to be where they are today? So there's a lot of things to think about there, I think.
And do you think a company's societal, I guess, or community involvement is something that candidates think about as well when they're looking for the right company?
Yeah, I think so. I think, again, it depends on the company and on the person. But I think for me personally, knowing that the company I work for is doing something for the greater good of society is fairly rewarding and is quite important as well. I think the times are gone where a company just made money and it gave you a job and that was it. I think everyone sort of tried to move business towards a concept where, yes, you generate money for the shareholders, but you also generate something positive for the people in the community that business operates in.
Yeah, and I think it is becoming increasingly important. It's still not, a huge factor, I don't think, for many candidates, but it's definitely increasing. And, those businesses that are strong in their local community and help out, I think do have a better reputation and are able to attract more staff.
Yeah, that's right. And look, there's different ways you can look at that as well. There's going to be, let's take an agricultural dealership. They might say, well, look, we sell and service agricultural equipment, and we make money off that, and that's who we are. And then the other one down the road might say, well, we help give farmers the tools they need to put food on the table for everyone in this country.
Yeah.
And I know it's just a play on words. It's just a different way of saying the same thing. But at the end of the day, it ascertains to a wider culture within the company.
Yeah. And let's talk about the culture and how, ordinarily we sort of talk to candidates and we talk about either corporate structure, is that something that you can get behind or get involved with, or do you prefer the family style business or privately owned business? So I guess what do we mean by that? I think with corporate culture, I've personally been involved with both types. I've been involved in large corporate businesses as well as obviously my own business here now. You can definitely see differences. Corporate culture is very much, it's hierarchical. It's based on a hierarchy. There's certainly procedures and systems in place, and a lot more meetings, it's more structured, I think, is the way there. And we covered off on a lot of these positives and negatives before in big business, and I think that does reflect in the culture of those as well.
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, you just have to ask yourself, in my day-to-day during work life, do I want to be more personal or do I want to be in a more professional, so to speak, environment? I've always worked in a more personal environment. There's a reason for that. I prefer it that way. I'm more of a personal person in that sense. I like having that closer contact and feeling involved with everyone. And you just have to ask yourself that. Some people don't like that. Some people want, work's work. I want to go there. I want to do my job. I want to get paid, and I want to leave.
Yeah.
That's not really me personally. But again, it just depends on the person. You have to just try and picture yourself in each role and think, right, if I could do this job in a more family orientated dealership, what would it look like for me, or how would I perform? And do vice versa as well. Think about, just think of yourself in a more corporate place where there's lots of procedures and rules and everything's nicely set up, but some of those negatives apply that we talked about.
Okay, and so I guess once you've sort of decided what sort of culture or business you want to go for, how do you think we actually find that information or be able to evaluate different options? And we found a good article on LinkedIn. We'll put the link to the article in the show notes of this episode, but it was actually talking a lot about how to go about finding this information. So we thought we'd reference some of those points. And I guess the first thing was to check out that leadership team. The company tends to be a reflection of those leaders. So, use LinkedIn or other social tools to find those people, see what they're sort of saying about, the company and what they're doing. And you'll be able to get an indication there about, what sort of, messaging they're putting out there.
That's right. Yeah. Look, LinkedIn's really changed the game for that. You're able to get a pretty good look at the company before you even start, which was just not possible before.
Yeah.
One good method that I would advise people to do if they are 50-50 on whether they should take on a new role, they've gotten the offer and they're just thinking about it, go to LinkedIn and try to find the person that was in the role previously and message them.
Yeah.
If they have now left, they'll give you a pretty honest response. I've heard of people who've taken roles because of that. They said, great company to work for, but, I just had to move, I had to relocate, or I just hit my ceiling for me personally, or I wanted to have a career change. And I've also heard of people who've said that swung me the other way, and I'm very happy I I didn't end up going because that person said, look, I'll be honest, there was some good points, but, these are the true reasons as to why I left.
Yeah, and that very thing happened to me. I was looking at a job many years ago, and I contacted the old person who was in the role and asked them about it. And as a result, I'm glad I did because I didn't apply. But it is a valuable way of just sussing them out and see what their experience was. You can also see some of the progression as well of some of their or the experience, I guess, of some of their leaders. So if you're doing that research, and I know this is an article from LinkedIn, so it's going to be a lot of LinkedIn suggestions, but, seeing what sort of education they've got, what they've done previously, you'll get an understanding of the type of people.
Yeah.
And I think, if they don't have a LinkedIn profile or some sort of public profile as a leader of a company, I guess that's probably a red flag, I think. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. Look, it's the digital age. Everyone's you've got to at least have a company page on LinkedIn and that sort of thing. So I think that's pretty much the ABC of running a business now.
Yeah.
Touching on what you just said, say you're going for a new job at a dealership. There's a branch manager there who you'll be reporting to. You're applying for the service manager's role. You find the branch manager on LinkedIn. You have a quick look at his profile. If you see that this branch manager was originally a technician, he started off as a mechanic in the workshop and just worked his way up through this business or other businesses. You can see, okay, this person's definitely qualified. This person knows what they're talking about. They've got a lot of experience. It'd actually be really good for me to work under them. And vice versa as well. When you see someone who's in this branch manager position, you'll be reporting to them and you jump on their LinkedIn, you go, doesn't really have any experience in the dealership sector. And you go, I don't know, am I just going to be the guy who explains to him how dealerships work the whole time? And, he's obviously got some sort of management experience, but, you're going to be the one who's doing a lot of the dealership side of things, and maybe that's not the best way to go.
Yeah. And I think as well, you can, seeing that person's career progression, especially if it's within the same dealership, you can see that, this company does actually offer progression. This, this person started as a technician and they've worked their way up and now, they're the service manager or fixed operations manager or whatever it looks like. So, that's telling that, that's a positive to be able to see that progression, and that would come up from research like that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And look, another one we'd recommend is finding out what customers say. A little bit tougher sometimes to find customers. The best place to start, I find, is often Google reviews.
Yep.
If a business has got horrible Google reviews, they often won't be that great.
Yep.
If a business has glaring, 5-star reviews or 4-star at least and above, then often it's usually run pretty well.
Yeah, and also check your Facebook reviews as well, and LinkedIn. Maybe there's some public comments on their page there or something like that. And on an employment side of it, a lot of major job boards or even Glassdoor are built around that company review, so you can see some comments there. But I guess take that with a grain of salt, because most people who will take the time to review a place they've worked would probably have not nice things to say about it. So
that's right.
I would look at that objectively and not take it too seriously, but at least it might give you a couple of things that you might be able to bring up in an interview and say, how do you think that, this has come about or whatever. And that gives you an opportunity then to talk about it.
With reviews, people will either leave a review if they had a really, really good experience or a really bad experience. So generally speaking, reviews are not a good representation of your average experience at this company.
Yeah. But it can steer the conversation. It can give you some ideas. So it's a good place to have a look, I suppose. So
that's right.
And that brings us on to the final point. Once you've got that information, ask the questions in your interview. Ask them the questions based on the research that you found. Ask them, why did I did some research and found that you've got a number of customers complaining about this sort of thing. Is that something that's been resolved? Is that ongoing? It shows them that you're interested because you're thoroughly researching their company. But it also gives you an opportunity to get a straight answer about it so that you can make a decision as to whether it's a company that you're wanting to work for.
That's right, yeah, and it gives you a good idea of the challenges they're facing sometimes as well. If you're going for a management position, it's really, really good to know that. because it gives you an idea of, okay, these are the sort of challenges I'm going to be looking at once I start going into this business, once I start working in here. So asking them about those things that you found out, again, you're just showing you've done your research. If they're a good business, they won't be offended by what you found. At the end of the day, it probably only took you 10 minutes to find it online. So
exactly,
a potential customer can do the same.
And if they're offended, then it's probably not a company that you want to work for. So
then you found the problem.
Exactly. But I think that pretty much covers everything we wanted to talk about today. So thank you very much for your time today, Phil, and thank you for listening. And we'll be back again next week.
See you next week.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Adding Fuel to the Hire. If you have any questions or you'd like to hear us talk about a particular topic, why not send us an email at podcast@addingfueltothehire.com. If you like what we do and would like to support our podcast, please leave a review on your podcasting app of choice. For further information, please visit our website, addingfueltothehire.com.